Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network, and welcome to the Drafting the Circus program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about this past weekend racing and preview next week. Joining me in the studio, I have Richard Youden and Luis Torres. Fellas, how we doing?
Very good, thank you.
It's been an adventurous past couple weeks.
Certainly, yeah. So, Luis, you've just returned from Phoenix, Arizona, where NASCAR held their championship weekend. So we have three new champions in NASCAR. And all three championships had a bit of a different result. If we look at Ben Rhodes, who won the truck championship, here's a guy who, started off the year with a bang with a couple of back-to-back wins, and then didn't visit victory circle again the rest of the year, but maintained that consistency with several top 10 finishes in the podium and winds up as a champion, and then proceeded to deliver the most entertaining post-race interview presser I've seen in a long time, and more on that later. And then we had in the Xfinity series Tyler Reddick, who has not won.
Negative there.
No,
not Tyler Reddick.
Tyler Reddick's a Cup guy.
Yeah, I thought so. No, what's
Daniel
his guy?
Hemric.
Daniel Hemric. See, they got similar names.
Yeah.
I mixed those two guys up, right?
I mean, they drove for Keselowski in trucks in the past, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I got a little Ben Rhodes syndrome going on. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Daniel Hemric not won a race in his career. This is his first and only win, and it also comes along with the championship. And then, of course, in the Cup race, we had Kyle Larson being victorious, the guy who won the most races this year, wins the last one. Great last pit stop to seal that off. So everybody can feel like the right guys won that Cup for sure. So let's get into it. Which race do you want to talk about first, Luis? I mean, you were there all weekend long.
Honestly, I want to talk about that Xfinity race real quick because in this world, what I do and what I love to thrive to do well, and hopefully for many more years to come, I have never been that nervous over a race ever in my entire life. I've covered so many moments like Deegan's first win, Elio's 4,500. I was there when there was only 6 cars left in the Busch Clash, the last traditional Busch Clash. This one, I just had no idea how it was going to end up. Was it going to be like Bristol all over again with Cindric and Allmendinger crashing towards the line? Or was it going to be Gragson rallying back? Or all the 3 title contenders of Gragson, Cindric, and Hemric wrecking and Allmendinger wins it from out of nowhere? There was so much stuff going on. I just did not know how exactly it was going to play out. And Hemric was just timed it perfectly. He just did not give up. And the thing about Hemric, it's the day before his primary hauler was stuck in Texas. So what I had to do is get Ty Gibbs' ARCA West hauler, in which he won the race, by the way. Chesley Love won the championship in one of the most Felipe Massa, Timo Glock moments of all time. But big picture was the 18 car, arrived in a white trailer. Sun was beaming about a half hour before Xfinity practice. And then they unloaded the car, they set up the cameras, they went straight to work, and they got him out in practice. It was third quickest. So I knew from the back of my mind, I just saw that maybe all this rotten luck that Hemric has had, maybe it will culminate to something greater tomorrow. And lo and behold, final corner, got the run, battled real hard with Austin Cindric. They rubbed fenders, and Hemric actually held them off with the big win. And his final race with Joe Gibbs Racing, no less. Dave Rogers' first win as a crew chief since Carl Edwards' final Cup win at Texas, which ironically took place on the day of November 6, 2016. So 5 years to the day between wins for Dave Rogers.
Yeah, it was a really good battle for at least three of the four guys. And I know Cindric was very disappointed to get, sort of moved out of the way at the last minute. But for his part, I thought he was very mature in handling it and congratulating, his rival there losing the title.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Jeff, when I interviewed Jeff Burton during media day, that he pointed out. That's one of the main characteristics of Austin Cindric. He has really grown and matured a lot. When we were talking about how maturity and respect and all of that after the wild truck race at Marsville was, Jeff Burton pointed out Cindric being one of those guys that has got it together. And that's one of the things that he has grown a lot, because I remember 2017, he was just viewed at a negative light. And in 2018, he just couldn't find any luck at all in the 60 car with Roush. And just over time, I think by running the Xfinity series for a number of years, being a frequent contender for wins, has molded him quite well to, I think he may be all right for his Cup rookie here in the 2 car.
Yeah, I really
He's come a long ways.
Yeah, even though he won the championship last year, I think that this one more season in Xfinity is going to have him so much better prepared and just the way things fell in place, because he was originally slated to slide over to the Wood Brothers car, but now he's hopping in pretty much the top rung of Penske there. That number 2 car has been pretty much the team leader over the years, so that's a really good ride he's stepping into.
Absolutely. And it would be curious to see how he does the Cup. I mean, if things went a certain way, Cindric could have been a Daytona 500 champion this year in his Cup debut. He had a really strong car at one point to where maybe he could have been in that fight for the win at Daytona for the 500, because he had a spectacular debut and a strong car. All the Penskes were good, but he surprised me a lot that he was actually in the mix. And when it comes to road courses, I think there's no question he'll be a contender right out of the gate. He's just going to have to deal with AJ Allmendinger and Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott on a regular basis now on those road courses.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's going to walk in and be a Cup champion first off, but again, like I said, I feel this one more year in Xfinity has probably prepared him very well. And I think he's making the transition to Cup at the exact correct time in his career and picking up a very good ride again. So, but let's talk more about our champion, whose name I can't remember, Hemric.
Absolutely.
Because I confuse those two guys. So what are his plans going forward? I mean, you had mentioned this last race with Gibbs.
He's going to Colleague Racing I think he's taking over Justin Haley's number 11 car. So he's coming into the main car of Colleague Racing, while Haley will move up full-time in the Cup Series with Colleague after spending a couple years with Colleague in Xfinity, a couple Cup starts then and there. He just basically finished 2021 essentially running double duty for almost the whole entire campaign with Spire and Cup and Colleague with Xfinity. So yeah, Hemric is going to go with that very team. Of course,
is he going at the Cup level, or is he another full
Xfinity?
Year in Xfinity? Another full year in Xfinity. Okay.
So he's kind of basically probably going into a Tyler Reddick moment. Speaking of, because when Reddick won the championship the first time in 2018, he was dated with JRM. He wasn't their best driver. I'd be curious to see if 2022, if Hemric racks up wins and be in contention for a number of them on a regular basis with Colleague, similar to when Reddick went to RCR in 19. I still stand when he went to RCR in 19.
See, you confuse those two guys too.
I mean, I confuse people. I confuse people all the time. That's kind of part of the routine.
Yeah.
But Hemric is going to a pretty good ride too. I'd be curious to see if Hemric will have the Reddick effect, to where he goes to a team that is on par but not ahead of the team they were before, and actually go guns ablaze, blaze of glory, and dominate. Because we saw that in Reddick in 19, where he actually his title defense was way better than the first one because he actually was a frequent driver that won races and competed up front. Whereas in 2018 with JRM, Reddick only won the first race of the season and won the last one of the year. And which, well, when we talk about trucks, it's kind of similar with the particular champion that won the Truck Series race right out of the gate, but didn't win since.
Right. So now, speaking of our Truck Series champion, I did want to circle back to this press conference thing because I thought it was so entertaining. It's the funniest thing I've seen since Keselowski won the Cup and a couple hours later got on wind tunnel. And at the end of the season, you've had his dream winning championship. You've got a safe ride home. Why not celebrate with a few drinks? But young Ben Rhodes here. Plenty of champagne there at the end of the day. Plenty of cans of Bud Light, which he gave. He gave Bud Light some good sponsorship time. So, and he's raced a couple hours here. Probably hadn't eaten since the morning. A little dehydrated from being in a hot car in Phoenix. With the adrenaline on. So that stuff goes to your head pretty quick. But in the presser, he's pretty toasty, and it's very entertaining to watch it. If you haven't seen this, folks that are listening, just Google that Ben Rhodes press conference. It's very entertaining. He's he's going between making race car noises. There's a vroom vroom vroom. Not today, Mama Jamma, and alternately to what was I talking about now? Oh yeah, I'm feeling good because my bud is here with me. So it was just very entertaining. Really, I think some people may look at that in a negative light, say it's bad for the sport. But hey, these guys work hard for that. And who doesn't like to celebrate with a couple of cold beers, right, Richard?
Oh, I mean, I think you've got to. Sorry, I was just topping myself up there. No, I think. How do you think I get through this show every week? No, I think it's great when you see these guys, especially in that situation. They've just won a championship. It's been the culmination of a year-long, work by these guys, and you've got to let your hair down and have some fun. I wouldn't know anything about winning championships and celebrating, but the odd race win here and there, it's definitely worth celebrating for sure.
And evidently, since then, people have been shipping 30 packs of Bud Light to his house. He's been on Instagram. Oh, look, more Bud Light.
I'll text him. Yeah, if he didn't
so
if it doesn't lead to a sponsorship opportunity, even if it's for one race, it'll be sad. It'll be a travesty because there's good publicity. I think if Bud Light wants to jump aboard, they have no conflict. Bud Light is part of Anheuser-Busch. Busch is part of Anheuser and all of that. So I don't think there's no clause anymore, to my knowledge. So why not give it a go? If I were Bud Light, sure, Bud Light is not my preference of choice. I'm more of a Heineken kind of guy with Bud. I like my Budweiser and my Miller and all that, but I'm not. Yeah. But anyways,
I don't think you'll be getting cases of Heineken at your front door, Luis, after tonight's show. I'm sorry. If that's what you're aiming for. I don't think you quite have the same social media outreach as a NASCAR truck champion. I'm sorry.
I know. And I'm not flagging myself against sponsorship for them, so it's all good. But it was certainly entertaining. I haven't seen anything at a name like. I think it's more or less people realizing that Ben has a personality. And I knew that for Ben is that when it comes to the few times I've asked questions towards Ben Rhodes or back where there's a Daytona in 2019 or even in that conference, he's one hell of a quote. He'll give you a response. He'll give you the details about certain things. During media day, he was telling me how his Cup debut, he felt like he'll have a lot of experience down there and all that stuff. So that's the thing about Ben. He's one hell of a quote. Like, he'll give you plenty of information response-wise. I remember even when he won the road course at Daytona, I said, will that be enough to go for the Rolex 24? And I asked him about that. It's like, he just won the Daytona road course. He's already thinking about Rolex 24. Would it be neat to see him run? Sure. I'm not sure where his FIA license status is because they like to change it a lot to where, say, Parker Kligerman went from bronze to silver, and they is maybe during the off season or whenever we can talk about the license status about bronze and silver. That might be an interesting learning curve. But
oh yeah, the whole FIA licensing process is a very interesting thing that's been, brought to a lot of light lately, particularly with all the Colton Herta Alfa Romeo stories that turned out to be non-stories. But, a lot of people have kind of really looked at that. It's kind of interesting that, to win, if you win a NASCAR Cup championship, that gives you the same amount of super license points as winning the Indy Lights championship. So you're talking about really dumping on U.S. racing and showing no respect for the series that, number one, is like largely, it's probably the second most popular form of racing in the world after Formula One. They've got the longest schedule, but to say, yeah, you're on par with Indy Lights.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. They got to do
and I know the cars aren't open wheel and the speed is lower, but yeah, it's a weird system that we could talk about. Be great fodder for a show coming up in a few weeks when there's less racing to talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Andretti later because it involves one driver that's no longer with the program but joined another one that's full-time bound. But to wrap up the Truck Series story, Ben was a master of consistency all season long. Yes, he only won Daytona, the road course, and the oval configuration, nothing else. But what he had is consistency. And I know in a system that is all about winning, Ben was just more consistent than John Hunter Nemechek. Yeah, and Nemechek hadn't won since June, I think, with Pocono. He hadn't won in a long while, but he was still viewed as the fastest and the favorite to win it. But he had problems in the final two races involving other people either taking him out or damaging the truck beyond repair or to fully recover. Nemechek got upset with Chris Wright, which I totally understand because it looked like Chris Wright just door slammed him and damaged the truck. And not sure what the whole deal with John Wood was, but he was just not happy because it felt like that championship should have been his. And because of the downfall towards the end of the year, Ben Rhodes ultimately ended up having the better average finish than John Hunter. So, see it as you will. Yes, Nemechek was the best truck driver in the field, but Ben Rhodes did what it used to be back in the day. If you're consistent and put yourself in position to run really good, it may favor you in the long haul, and that's what happened for Rhodes. He got the championship, and another one for Thor Sport, and so, yeah, it kind of worked out for him in his favor. And as far as the race itself, it was mostly a Sheldon Creed and Chandler Smith battle all night. Chandler Smith won his second race of the year in his career and locked up Rookie of the Year honors over Carson Hocevar due to that victory because he came into that race 3 points to the good for that honors. So, be curious to see how Chandler does because I still think he, along with Sam Mayer and Jesse Love, are the more touted driver. The three drivers that I view in high regard. Chandler came into this NASCAR in really high regard, really good in ARCA and all that stuff, but he kind of went through a learning curve in his rookie year. He seems like he's got it together now, so I keep an eye on him in 22, this Chandler Smith kid.
Certainly, yeah. So let's talk about the Cup race then, where we had, as always, our championship four seemed to pretty much run at the front all day. I think they finished 1 through 4, if I'm not mistaken.
Ryan Blaney got by Chase Elliott.
That's right. Blaney snuck in there. You're right. But they were all four very close to the front, which is just one of these anomalous things that always happens in the championship race. And I don't know if it's that these guys just prepare so much for this race or that the other guys just get out of the way because you don't want to be the one to get in the way and decide the title for somebody else.
And stop Kyle Larson at Homestead. He was in the mix regardless, or Jeff Gordon 2014 until he some reason pitted late in the race and was non-factor after that.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'd say 100%. I'd say 100% of the time, but certainly more often than not, the 4 championship contenders are always running near the front. And this one went back and forth several times. I mean, we had Truex was up there for a while. Denny Hamlin took a little turn at the lead there. Chase was up front for a while. Larson was up front on and off all day. He's been up front on all year. So you really got to say he looked to be in danger of losing this one until a late caution came out, which your conspiracy theorists will say that was a phantom caution. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But his crew managed to give him a perfect pit stop, and as we all know, perfect pit stops help win races, and put him out ahead of the guys. And it was, game over from there.
Helped to have that number 1 stall too, but with Larson, it was a curious case because he was up front and he had some fender to fender moments with Chase Elliott. They just really fought hard, and then at one point I set him back to where he had to work his way back towards the front. And by the time Truex seems like he was running away with it, Davis Starr, I've heard 2 things. Initially, I heard that his car was slow, that to the point it was around stalled. Then I looked back at the official data board. It says it was debris from Starr's car. So, call what you will, but it gave Larson another chance to get up there with Truex, and what was it, a sub 12-second pit stop to get him out in front, which was also comes to find out the last ever pit stop with the 5 lug nuts. You'll still see it in Xfinity and trucks. Just Cup, we're going with a single bull. So for Larson's crew to get it done in the final pit stop when it really matters most, it told you everything that it was an all-around team effort. He even told Cliff Daniels in that mosh pit that felt like a mosh pit when he got out of the car with the series of crew members and photographers and all that Cliff told Kyle, you did it, and Kyle told him in return, no, we did it. It was a whole team effort, and it was. They've just delivered big time, and it helped. Did it help to have the number 1 pit stop and Larson winning the pole the day before? Yes. But you got to put all the nuts and bolts together to get it done, and they did. Truex gave it his all. He did everything what he could have done, but just couldn't get there. He tried. He's just that short run, long runs was all the difference. Sometimes clean air and dirty air could reign supreme, but we saw all of that in the final restart. But Larson what a season. Not just because he's the first man since Jimmy Johnson to win 10 races. He's also, look at what he's done in the sprint and open wheel third world, Knoxville, King's Crown, Shiley's Bowl.
Yeah, I know. He's on his days off. What do you do on your days off? He goes, I go win more races.
Yeah, there's no off, there's no off season for Larson. The only off season he really has is just his media appearances in LA and whatever, in Nashville, all that stuff. But besides that, he's probably going to continue racing and win races because we have not seen a driver that goes out and win in multiple disciplines and win championships and all that stuff in a real long time. We haven't seen that in ages. Some people say that his Larson's 2021 season will go down as probably one of the greatest seasons by a driver ever, at least in the modern era, because it's kind of tough to compete with what Foyt and Andretti did in the 60s when they were able to do all the different types of vehicles in that era.
Yeah, it's it almost surprises me that Larson is still allowed to do all this, side work, moonlighting, if you call it, with the Cup contract. But then again, he's not bound to a major sponsor either, which is the other, because half the time his sponsor is Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah, the only time we see
he's got
something different like Valvoline every now and then.
Yeah, it was this year.
Races.
You wait till next year. Well, that'll be different, I'm sure.
Someone would be happy to put their name on his car, yeah. So
exactly.
Cup of noodles.
What did he say on that Twitch stream again, or whatever it was again? That's forgotten, hasn't it? What did he say? I can't remember now.
Well, I'm not going to repeat it on the radio.
No, we're not going to say it.
You know where I'm coming from.
I know where you're coming. Yeah, that's
everybody distanced himself for a while, and then look, sometimes money comes before ethics, doesn't it, in sports?
Yeah, it's just how it is. The ones that I know, when all the sponsors cut ties with him, I think Finley Farms was one of the very few that stuck with him from the very beginning. Albeit that's for his Outlaws cars and all that stuff, but still, I think over time, once he I think I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more sponsorships in a year or two. But I think with everything that he's been through, I think he shows that what everybody has thought about for a decade.
Oh, for sure. You give the guy, no disrespect to Ganassi, they were never in a position to win a championship. Did win the odd race here or there, and he was definitely the differentiating factor in that team. And it would have been interesting to have known where he would have gone if what happened hadn't happened, because I think his contract was up at the end of that year anyway. And it was always, that Hemric was probably the place he would have gone. But obviously everything that did happen sort of enabled that to happen a little bit easier, should we say. So it would have been interesting to have seen what the dynamics of that whole silly season would have been if it had taken its normal course.
Yeah, for sure, because he wasn't bound to anybody coming into 2021. Everything was blank. So, but I mean, but good for him. Here's a guy who's evidently learned his lesson about and to the point of the thing on the Twitch stream, I don't think anything really nefarious was meant by it.
Oh, for sure.
He
was just an idiotic off-the-cuff comment.
Off-the-cuff comment that he says to his friends that he just didn't even realize, didn't realize he was live, which is no excuse, right? And so, yeah. But I'm sure he's learned his lesson there, and it looks like he's came out better for it, for sure. But I mean, it is what it is. But here's a guy who's still relatively young, right? Still, one of the greatest talents we've seen in a while, and just to imagine what he can do going forward is pretty damn impressive.
Yeah,
and also it's.
Go ahead.
One thing I did want to mention, it's interesting. Everybody sort of looked at and I don't want to use this in the wrong word, the demise of Hemric Motorsport. Post, the Dale Jr., Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon era, where they had, three of the most marketable top guys in the sport. Hemric were the pinnacle of the sport for such a long period of time. Then they did drop off a little bit after Jeff Gordon left and Jimmy Johnson was sort of on the downward spiral of his career, and you had that sort of couple of years where especially Joe Gibbs was like the dominant team, but Hemric have won back-to-back championships now, and they've had had two cars in the Final Four this year along with Gibbs. They're right back at the sharp end of it now, and it's pretty damn impressive what they've achieved, considering it's been such a monumental shift in driver lineup and driver experience. And
right, we went from some of the most recognizable names in the sport to a bunch of young guys, but all these young guys, all of the Hemric drivers have really come to the forefront. Even if you say, Alex is a hack.
Exactly. Alex the Hack Bowman.
I'm like, I think it's so hilarious that Denny Hamlin says, well, Alex Bowman gets his ass beat by his teammates. I'm like, Denny, you get your ass beat by Alex's teammates too. But
yeah.
He might have been 14th in points, but he won 4 races. And Byron, he won 1, but Byron has shown he could be in the mix big time for top 5s and wins all season.
Yeah, I think all four of the young drivers have done well, and I think they all 4 have great careers ahead of them. And so, while we kind of question this, I remember talking about it on the show a couple of years ago that they're losing all their experience and getting these young guys in there, and how detrimental this may be to the team. With a couple of years behind these guys now, it's paying dividends.
And what did I say? If you remember back, I said the one thing that they've got, for 15 years, Hemric Motorsport have had the largest wage bill for drivers in the NASCAR field by a long way. You think what they were paying, and no disrespect to guys like Casey Kane, what they were paying those 3 drivers I just mentioned earlier at the peak of their careers, tens of millions of dollars a year in driver salaries. And now, no disrespect to the 4 drivers they have now, nowhere near those sort of numbers in terms of salary. And I know for a fact they have massively reinvested that delta of resource back into the engineering side of the team and the other side of the team that we don't see on a weekly basis with the driver names and the driver salaries. And it's massively paying benefits now. And, you got to, I know they've hired some really experienced, people there to run that team from a technical side. And, the Hemric group have put their faith in some pretty well respected people in the industry. And it's really starting to pay dividends and pay off. And, you're seeing that it's not just one guy that's at the front, it's all four cars are there or thereabouts week in, week out. And that stands a testament to how they're running the team away from the track.
Yeah, exactly. To your point, they freed up so much payroll money to use elsewhere that, they've got, they're the team to beat right now. Just like Gibbs was 3-4 years ago. I
think teams will probably have to look into that method, that concept, especially with the next gen car. I remember Kurt Busch was saying they may look for a crew chief outside of NASCAR, Formula One, or I think IMSA, or even supercars, because they know some teams are looking into this idea that maybe they got to rely on outside sources that has done it in multiple disciplines.
Oh, yeah, I mean, with this new car, there's no doubt we're going to need to see some new blood in engineering departments in many of the teams. I was looking at some specs on the new car just earlier today, and it's just it's compared to the dinosaur it's replacing. It's there's some pretty fabulous stuff there, and I think it might be slower initially, until we figure it all out. But
But here's an interesting thing for you. So in theory, I was talking to somebody last week about this one who's a pretty senior director at one of the teams. I was having a conversation with them last week, and in theory, no car should ever fail inspection now. And in fact, they're talking about getting away from inspection, because all the parts that you see on a car will actually be bought from vendors, and they'll all be designed within reasonably tight tolerances. And there'll be a few thou to play with in terms of scaling and the like. But the theory is that even if you push the car to its limits, so like for a speedway car, you want to make it as narrow as possible. For a road course car, you want to give it as much downforce as possible, make it as big as possible. Even if you stretch it to the limits of all of these tolerances, they still should be within, what you'd consider, conventional inspection windows. So in theory, you should never have a car sent to the back because they failed inspection. If they have, it means they're not using approved NASCAR parts. And we will see that. We will see teams trying to slip a bracket in, or a suspension upright, or a wishbone, or whatever it is, that's not approved or has been dropped or something like that. That's what you're going to see a lot of that. Oh, you mean that angle's too stiff? Oh no, I dropped that one. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I think you're going to see happening.
Certainly, yeah, but we're going to continue to see a lot of these cars testing in the off season, and some of them look, when they throw the liveries on those, I think it's a good looking car. I'm pretty excited to see how well they perform when there's 40 of them on the track. So, but that being said, any more compelling NASCAR stories we need to touch on before we talk about this Formula One race?
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
I think there's just very few things to point out. Obviously, Brad Keselowski had his final race with Roger Penske. Ironically, when you all talk about the celebration, they brought that big old cup of Miller Lite.
The one from the championship, the one that looks like a big old cowboy boot. Yeah, I did see that.
Yep. Let's see. Ryan Newman's future is still unknown. He'll still like to be in the top level. Ryan Preece, the only thing he has set up is the Snowball Derby, which he hasn't competed in 13 years. Eric Almirola, though, quietly had a strong car all day, finished sixth, and arguably you may say he was the best SHR driver towards the end of the year, not because he has had that one Loudon win and the only SHR driver to win, period. He's just had a strong car all day, quietly, and lost into that shuffle. And then other stock car news, Noah Gregson's crew chief is now moving on to Eric Jones in the Cup Series, and Ben Bashir will not be crew chiefing Kyle Busch in the Clash. He's been suspended for that luck nut violation.
And speaking of the Clash, we did have a little preview of the track. I believe it was Kyle Larson, was it, that went out to visit the Coliseum?
Yep, it was Kyle Larson visiting the Coliseum to do some interviews.
I'm still up in the air if that thing is going to be fun to watch or just a one groove kind of, but we'll see.
It's already finicky as far as where media can be and where photographers can be as well. I'm keeping a close eye on that because I got to see if it's worth the travel to go there or just save up for Daytona St. Pete. But we'll see.
Yeah, well, I would vote for Daytona St. Pete myself, but so anyway, yeah. And speaking of Brad Keselowski, and y'all know I'm a Keselowski fan. I hate the fact that he's leaving Penske, but I'm happy for him taking on a partial ownership role, and I'd love to see what his career brings him next. But the interesting thing for me is I was online the other day, and I went to the Penske website, and all of Brad's gear is on sale. I got me a real nice blue Keystone Light Charlotte Brad Keselowski Team Penske hoodie that's $70 retail for $60. So hey, check it out. So my quick plug for teampenske.com shop. So anyway, so Richard is stepping away for a second. So before we get into Formula One, let's talk about Kyle Kirkwood.
Yes.
You alluded to him a little earlier. Kyle Kirkwood, the Indy Lights champion, who was hoping to have a home with Andretti Autosport, but as things were maybe planned to be, that if Colton Herta was to leave for Formula One, Kirkwood would be in that 26 car. In the meantime, they put Devlin DeFrancesca in the 29 car because Devlin is well funded. And face it, the team needs that funding. So Kirkwood was a free agent, so he is signed with AJ Foyt.
Yes, indeed, he'll be replacing Bourdais, in which Bourdais will go to IMSA in the Ganassi Cadillac program.
And it's interesting that Bourdais had initially said he had hoped to run some limited, starts with AJ Foyt and try to help the team as much as he could, but it seems to me that the Foyt team has made the decision they'd rather have the same guy in that car week after week after week, and they feel like Kirkwood is their guy. So Kirkwood, of course, is bringing the Indy Lights sponsorship money, which is $1.375 million, which is not a small sum, but compared to what some other drivers are bringing in, is a little paltry, and it's supposed to guarantee you 3 starts, with one of them being the Indy 500. And that's how that's designed. Now, for him to parlay this into a full-time ride is great. Great for his career. Not so great that he's with AJ Foyt, but at the end of the day, it's still a full-time ride. He's going to be on the track week in, week out, able to show what he can do. I don't know if AJ's got him on a 1-year deal, 2-year deal, or what.
It's a 1-year deal.
The 1 year.
Looking at the transcript.
So it's a 1-year deal. So he can get out of that if it doesn't seem to be promising enough. But at the same time, it's great for him to get the full year, because we've had a couple of Lights champions. Spencer Pigot comes to mind, that were only able to parlay their initial scholarship into that 3-race kind of deal.
Or the one Indy Lights champion that didn't even show up on the IndyCar grid, period.
Yeah, that guy just declined it. I forget who that was. But then you got a guy like Gabby Chavez, who was able to get a full season ride out of it with Herta. But then when the other sponsorship fell through and Herta needed to merge a team with Andretti, poor old Gabby Chavez was on the outside looking in, and Gabby drives still for Brian Herta in the Hyundai program in the off-road thing. So, all right. So Richard, I see you're back. So let's talk about the Grand Prix of Mexico. Wonderful facility
Indeed.
down there. Beautiful track.
Yep.
Max Verstappen is won the race, and that is the 10th race for Red Bull this year. And I read a stat today that said if Max doesn't win this thing, right, the last team to win 10 races and not win the championship was who? Take a wild guess.
Williams.
No. Louise, you want to take a guess?
As far as what?
The last team to win 10 races and not win the championship.
Something tells me it might be Ferrari 08.
But
no.
Ferrari won the championship in 08, if you recall.
No, you're right. Excuse me. McLaren 08.
Well, if you would have said McLaren 05, you'd be right.
Makes sense. Raikkonen when his car finished.
Yeah, win or bust. Yeah.
I don't know. Just an interesting stat I read today. But right now, at the moment, it does not look like Verstappen is going to lose this thing because he just continues to deliver race wins. So, Richard, go ahead and talk us through the Grand Prix of Mexico, where the third place guy on the podium caused a lot of ruckus there among the fans.
Yeah, I mean, goodness me, imagine what would happen if Checo actually won the thing. Wow. But that was never going to happen, unfortunately, with the title in the way, the championship the way it is set. You know, as much as the home fans would like to see it, I think everybody would like to see it. Red Bull were never going to allow Checo to win that if Max was in up around in second place. But it was pretty much a Red Bull dominated weekend, apart from qualifying. Really, they look phenomenal in the race pace. Very rarely do you hear Hamilton come on the radio and say, these guys are just too quick. And he did that multiple times in the last two races in Austin and Mexico City. So, Red Bull really have all their ducks in a row right now and are really executing incredibly well. And if they maintain this speed in the next 3 or 4 races, then it's championship over, I think. All that Mercedes can do with Hamilton is try and get P2 and hope that something happens to Verstappen in terms of reliability or an accident or collision, retirement, whatever it may be. Because on pure pace, nothing's going to happen here. Mercedes are not going to catch Red Bull. And Mexico City, prime example of it. It's a difficult track to follow closely anyway because of the atmospheric conditions. It's at relatively high altitude, thin air, which does have an aerodynamic effect on the vehicle, on the car, aerodynamics and engine implications. So you can never run that close. That's why Mexico has 3 DRS zones. So it does give an advantage, to try and get within that 1 second window and try and close those gaps there. But, you really can't. You cannot fault what Red Bull are doing right now. It is phenomenal. It's just, executing. And the great thing about it is they're executing under pressure. You look at what Mercedes have done recently and what Red Bull did back in the Seb Vettel era. They were impressive, but they were really only ever fighting themselves. There was never, there's been the odd season where it has been potentially between 2 different manufacturers or constructors. But at the moment, this season, it is these 2 teams going head to head, and it is Red Bull that are making the least mistakes, and they're executing in the best way imaginable. And you've really got to tip your hat to them and praise them for what they're doing. It's phenomenal. And back down the pack there, normally where there's some pretty good and intense racing, it just wasn't really that sort of race weekend, unfortunately. Gasly drove a fantastic race to get P4. Checo did okay to get P3.
I was going to say, I don't think a television camera set on Gasly all day.
No, it was.
What you're saying
phenomenal.
is Gasly's like Carlos Sainz a couple years ago, quietly having a great run, so no one talks about it.
I thought Gasly had a great run. I think I for whatever reason, I just really like Gasly. I think he's a great younger talent, and I think he's got a great future ahead of him. But just very, very, very quietly, great run to 4th place. Of course, Perez first Mexican to sit on the podium in a Mexican Grand Prix. Everybody loved that.
But what I guess it was the situation. It was the fact that it was a Mexican driver coming on the podium at the Mexican Grand Prix. But to my mind, it was a bit of a race by Checo. I mean, he didn't do bad, but he didn't do anything amazing. You know, he was on that alternate strategy a little bit, which gave him a chance to try and close in on Hamilton towards the end. But I'd like to have seen them gone longer on those medium tires and maybe giving him a chance on the soft tire, you know, towards the end. But you know, he did okay. But there's a handful of drivers that I think in the same situation could have got the same result for him, you know, as he did. I just think it was, you know, it was obviously great for him and great for the crowd, but you know, he came third, guys. You know, I say if he'd won the race, I'd have got it. But
Yeah, in
he
fairness,
got a
it's
P3.
true.
He got a P3, which was good, you know, but I
What
think
it
he'll be
did-
disappointed a little bit.
Yeah, what it did is tighten up that constructors championship battle big time now. Because at one
because, I
point,
mean-
it looked like Mercedes were going to probably hold off, but now with those back-to-back
Yeah.
podiums, they're there.
Oh yeah, especially as Valtteri had a really poor weekend.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's,
from
Valtteri
he-
started from the pole.
And he got
Yeah.
turned.
Yeah, so let's talk about that first lap a
yeah.
little bit.
So yeah, so you got this. I think it's probably the longest run down to turn one on the grid. Maybe Barcelona's up there in terms of distance from the start finish line to the first corner. And you know, because the slipstream is so effective around there, again, it's a bit like Sochi. You know, there's a lot of, you don't really want to start, you know, first or second. You know, third and fourth is a pretty good spot to be, as that's what it proved this, you know, past Sunday, when, you know, Valtteri and Lewis got some pretty good starts, but Max got a competent start. I think on the timing, the reaction times that the FAA or Formula One put up, Max was a little bit slower, but he had that slipstream coming down into turn one and was able to get on the outside of Bottas sort of going into turn one, which sort of pinched Bottas to the inside a little bit. And Danny Ricciardo sort of locked up a hair going into that corner and did tag the back end of Valtteri. And Valtteri span. Ricciardo had to have a new wing. I don't think Valtteri had any damage, but they pitted him anyway as a strategy call, put him on the hard tyre because there was a safety car at the end of the first lap there to help clear up Tsunoda, who'd had a coming together with I think it was Ocon in the Alpine there. So, but then you had this situation where pretty much Valtteri and Danny Ricciardo were just like following each other for the whole race, and Valtteri just couldn't get past him. And I don't think he had any damage in that early phase there. But again, you know, the fact that he spent 50 odd laps behind Ricciardo and then had a slow pit stop when he finally came in to change his tires later in the race, it just again sort of summed up a little bit of what Mercedes were looking at with Valtteri maybe not being on that same level as Hamilton. And I mean, Hamilton was actually, I don't know whether it was just tongue in cheek or realistic, but he was critical of Valtteri for letting Verstappen through at the start of the race, which I think is a little bit harsh. But yeah, it wasn't a great weekend for Valtteri. And the next 3 or 4 races, I think he's just winding down and wanting to get out of there and head over to Alfa Romeo for next year. I don't think there's much enthusiasm there. I think that some of the things that have come out of the team, I said that quote by Lewis was a little bit much in my mind. And yeah, I think he's just looking forward to getting out of there and a fresh start next year.
No, for
Yeah,
sure.
he's off maligned, you know, by both fans and his own team. You know, when the guy at the end of the day, he's a decent Formula One driver. He wouldn't be in that seat if he wasn't.
No,
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When you have a constructors championship out on the line, sure, what happened at the start is one thing, but if he needs to he needs to step it up if he's going to stop Checo in some sudden momentum of podiums, if you're going to bring Mercedes to their end the turbo hybrid era undefeated in the constructors. It's just simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at it and I think that, yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's sort of petering out a little bit right now, isn't it, for Valtteri? And as I say, some of the things that have come his way publicly have been pretty harsh. You imagine what's being said behind the doors, and at the end of the day, he's probably like, "Well, screw you guys." I'm not going to sit around here and be spoken to like that. So
I
what?
mean, even
I'm off.
one of those races, he pretty much felt that way. I forget which one it was, but there was one race this season that kind of gave that vibe. It's like, dude, you gotta give me the chance, because if they
is that the one where they forced him for the engine change? And then he put that thing on his Instagram about, here, Valtteri.
not that one. There was another one in race where he thought that this approach will benefit the team, if not the other way around, but that didn't work out. I forget what race it was. It was early in the year.
Yeah, I just think it's that relationship has run its course, and I think it's time for that change to go. To happen, obviously. But
no, for sure, because it's kind of at this moment he's going through the motions, and honestly,
exactly.
If you're going through the motions, when the constructors is still on the line, where is it? What, like now 1 point the gap? How
it is close, and I know it's very close.
It's single digits now.
Number. But I think that momentum, you'd have to certainly look at it as being in Red Bull's court for sure.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see where it all plays out in the next few races. But I think obviously you're in Brazil this weekend. That's the third race in a row. Back to back weekends. And I think we said before going into Austin, these three races were critical. Because prior to Austin, Mercedes had a bit of a rejuvenation and some good results there. But you look at it now and you're like, okay, Red Bull have really got everything going in the right direction. And if they come out 3-0 in these three races in the America continent races, that's it. I think I can't see Mercedes getting back into the constructors or Lewis getting back into the drivers. I think this has been this is like a tight ball game going into the start of the fourth quarter with, Mercedes being behind by a score, but then, Red Bull just have this perfect drive that eats up loads of the clock and leaves gets this really nice touchdown at the end of the drive and leaves the other team just, hoping for fumbles and Hail Marys sort of thing going into the 2-minute warning. And I just think that's the situation we're in right now, and these three races have been critical in the championship season.
Yeah.
Wow, Richard, I didn't realize you watched enough American football to nail that reference.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know. More often than not, when you talk about football, to me, it's what us American blokes call soccer. But nice analogy. I like that a ton. Good job. Go ahead, Louise. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said, good analogy indeed. I agree. I totally agree with you, Richard, because I said in the back of my mind, if Verstappen delivers at Austin, delivers in Mexico, and delivers in Interlagos, game over. Because I said to my mind, Mexico and especially Interlagos should favor Max. And then we'll see how those Middle East races, because the Middle East should favor Hamilton. But if Hamilton does not deliver in those American races going into the Middle East portion of the campaign, it's over for Lewis. And it's looking like it that way right now. So he's going to need a lot of help and drama at Interlagos. And I'm not talking about outside the track. We're talking about inside the track. Then we got something go. Then this title will be really, really compelling.
Yep.
Absolutely, yeah. Sure. So now, guys, we've just got about 5 or 6 minutes left. And I do want to touch on a couple of stories about manufacturers joining various sports. And the first one I want to mention is the Dodge seem to have thrown their hat back into the ring of NASCAR. Steve Phelps made a comment where he really kind of dodged the question, but he said he could neither confirm nor deny that Dodge was involved, but he also said that Dodge is probably the closest to joining in and that things are progressing and we'll announce something when we have something to announce. Now, the other one is that it's widely reported that the Volkswagen Group, which encompasses Porsche and Audi, so they can, badge the cars as Porsches and Audis, because if we badge them as VWs, Louise won't be happy.
Who said I wasn't going to?
I just had to bring it up. It's hilarious. And so it's looking like Volkswagen is trying to put some feelers out there to see if they could just buy into one of the existing teams. And the teams they've spoken with are McLaren, which is intriguing because I don't think that McLaren is actually for sale, but I don't know how much of a piece Volkswagen AG would want to buy. The other teams are Williams and of course Sauber. And when we know from the whole thing with Andretti that Sauber is a bit open to talking to folks that may want to buy into their team. So Richard, are you hearing anything on the Porsche rumors? Because they tend to get stronger and stronger that as we go to the new engine, this is something that Volkswagen AG, Porsche, Audi are very interested in showcasing.
Yeah, I think you look at especially the Audi brand. Of the performance brands, they've probably been the most active in this hybrid e-mobility era, I think, from what they're doing with their cars, like the Audi e-tron, as they're calling them. And Porsche have their own, e-mobility vehicles as well, and VW are pretty big in that as well. So I think they're probably the one brand that is missing from Formula One that could benefit from this sustainability image that they've seen. And actually, Formula One have announced that they've got a lot of new graphics and a lot of new e-mobility, sustainability marketing and promotional work that will be kicking off in Sao Paulo this weekend. They have been talking a while about coming back in, and some of the words and some of the sound bites coming out of Porsche have been, if we're going to do it, this is the time to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's getting closer, and I think it's more likely to happen than not. The interesting thing will be, where do they get the resources from? And when I say that, there are only, to be competitive, as you saw with Honda, it took them a long time to get competitive in Formula One, and then they eventually pulled the plug on the deal. You can imagine
as Honda has a reputation of doing.
For sure.
Yeah, they've been in and out of Formula One at least 4 times.
Yes, and Porsche won't want to, that VW Porsche Audi group won't want to be in the same boat. They won't want to look at it and go, okay, we're coming in, but it's going to take us 6 years to become competitive. They'd want to be competitive reasonably quickly. So where do you get your talent pool from an engineering standpoint? Mercedes powertrain are very, very strong in terms of personnel, and a lot of players have left Mercedes and gone to the new Red Bull powertrain unit. And then, of course, you've got Ferrari there, Renault there, who are maybe not as strong, should we say, potentially on their power unit side. So if Porsche were to come in and say, right, okay, we need to find 500, 750, maybe even 1,000 employees to make a competitive engine, where do you get these people from? I mean, it's a great time to be involved in that sort of work, because the money is going to be thrown around like nobody's business.
Yeah, Volkswagen is one of the most cash-rich companies on earth. Most people don't realize that, but they are.
Yeah, and you look at obviously the restrictions you have in Formula One at the moment in terms of not salary caps, but budget caps, and they're like, well, that's, as far as I'm aware, there's no implications on that on the engine side. So these engine companies and these engine manufacturers, and I may be wrong in that, but I don't think it is, have huge budgets, and that's where a lot of this work's going. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens, with this if they do come in, who they hire. And I mean, you're looking at what 2026 is the new engine regulation, I believe, is the time scale. So
that's the target date, 2026.
They're going to have to be starting and make a firm announcement within the year. I think realistically, it would take 3 years, I think, to create a competitive package that could be reasonably competitive in the first couple of years, and then by the third year, So by 2029, you'd want to be on a level playing field with everybody else. So it's starting to, it's starting to take shape. Something's going to have to happen pretty quickly, I think. First of all, the engine regulations for 2026 have to be finalized by the FIA and all the current engine manufacturers. And excuse me, I don't know if that's been done officially yet. So there's still a few little bits and pieces and maneuverings to sort of come to fruition on that one. But it's an interesting situation, I think, and I hope they do come in. I think the more manufacturers.
Oh, I hope they do. I mean, golly, Volkswagen is one of my favorite makes. My first, as a young person, my first 7 cars I owned were Volkswagens.
So the first car I ever owned was a Volkswagen, as they called it in Europe, a Volkswagen Golf, which I think it was like the Rabbit in the US or something.
Yeah.
Polo. Sorry, the Volkswagen Polo. Well, it was the Rabbit, I think.
It was the Rabbit in the US. It was the Polo somewhere, and it was the Golf in a lot of places. Yeah. But,
the Golf's a bigger version. The Golf's slightly bigger than the Polo. There was like 2 little.
Yeah, but they called the original Rabbit the Golf in a few places.
Okay.
Polo,
okay.
But then when they rebranded it, when they made the bigger car, which was in about 85.
Yeah, I don't remember
85 or so. Then they just made it. Then they made it Golf across the board, all countries. You didn't have different names, but I think it's a
great. I think it's a perfect brand for Formula One. I think you really need it in there.
Yeah, even if it's badged as a Porsche or an Audi. But I would love to see the Volkswagen name on a Formula One car. I think it is. I'm gonna tell you that. Yeah, this is kind of funny. When I was a little kid, I would draw future Formula One cars, and I would always draw the Volkswagen branded Formula One cars. And I finally remember of course, my family race team. We run the Formula V series, which is it runs very old Volkswagen air-cooled engines. But I used to be a huge fan of the old Super V series, which was also known as Mini Indy, which is there was a USAC precursor to what they call Indy license day and age. But those were essentially the Rabbit engines in race cars. So Volkswagen's got a pretty good history in racing, as well as you talk about touring car championships and those sort of things too. But
I mean, they do have a spec series in the UK for VW. But yeah, I imagine they'd use the Porsche brand. I think that's the brand that's been touted for a while. But I think that also, probably looked at that. It's similar to the Honda have done in the US when they raced at Austin. They ran the Acura branding, and it was actually interesting, wasn't it? I don't know if you caught it, but part of Lewis Hamilton's radio transmission midway through the race was, "Oh look, they've got Acura on the back of their rear wing," And it's amazing how they sort of have the mental capacity to process these sort of things. I thought it was an amazing radio transmission by Lewis there, just to say, "Oh,
it's also admitting, hey, I'm behind him."
Yeah, exactly.
So, but guys,
all
right, fellas, we're out of time. But real quick, Brazil this week. Who do you like?
Max.
Okay, you said it first.
You said Max. I'll go with. Screw it, Gasly.
Yeah. There you go. I would, of course, my brain goes with Max, but because we have our little rule that we pick different people, I'll go with Lewis. Say he gets out of his losing streak to Max, but I really think Max is going to win. So, but anyway, I want to thank you, Louise, Richard. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. But most of all, I want to thank you folks who listen to us week in and week out. And quick preview next week, Jade Gurse, author of the new book, Al Unser Jr.'s biography, as told to Jay Gurse, Al Unser Jr., A Checkered Past. Jade Gurse, great friend of the show. He will be on for his 4th appearance with us. You won't want to miss that one. But until then, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com. Enter website.